Hello, welcome to another edition of Prove All Things. I want to thank everybody who's joining us today live, whether you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, X, or the CGI Digital Network app, whether that's on your phone, tablet, or television. We thank you for joining us live. We look forward to your comments, and also we just want to welcome everyone who is watching this as a recorded program or listening later on. Thanks for joining. I am joined with co-host Mike James. How you doing, Mike?
Hey, Jeff, good to see you. I can't believe it's the last show of 2024, man. We're going into 2025. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, 2025. When I thought I'd be in 2025, I thought I'd be living on Mars or something. Yeah. But yeah, it's just time goes by pretty quick when you get older. It seems like.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I got the monthly Bible study coming up this Friday. If anyone's interested in joining us, just shoot me an email. And we're working on the nature of God, and the Holy Spirit is what we're contemplating right now. And also, I had some sad news, Jeff, I wanted to pass along. Our contact, our host person in Rwanda, Jean-Claude Rabumba, passed away suddenly on Saturday. He was only 48 years old. I don't know all the details of the sickness. He became sick, and quickly, soon after that, he passed. And going to learn more, and we'll have a write-up about it in the international news, the next edition that comes out.
That's very, very sad to hear. So, yeah. But I was at the Winter Family Weekend this past weekend and got to meet a lot of people. Got to see Robert Ansando from Africa. He was there,
right?
And people were from everywhere. It's a good event to be a part of. You know, during a time when the world is keeping the Christmas holidays, to get together with people of like minds and just have some fun and do some kind of almost like a mini little feast kind of thing we're doing. But it was lot of fun to be a part of that.
Yeah, I've been there a couple times in the past, and it is an enjoyable experience for sure.
Yeah. And hopefully you may not be able to tell I'm squinting a little bit in one eye because I got a sty in one of my eyes. I don't know if you ever had that happen before. It's just like a little white thing that kind of comes up in the eye and kind of.
Okay. Hey, you know what's funny? I'm actually going to get my eyes checked later today, but I have not experienced that yet. Yeah.
You're lucky not to experience it. So to treat it, you got to put a lot of hold a warm washcloth on it quite a bit to kind of goes away.
Okay. But, I hope that gets better. Yeah. I didn't notice it until you told me. Now I'm looking at you like, okay, maybe
one eye is a little bit squinted. So it's getting better. So just got to keep holding on till it's all gone. All right. Well, hey, good having you here. And we're going to go ahead and bring in our guest today, Mr. Blake Silverstein. Let me see what's going on here.
Whoa. What's going on?
Hey, guys. Hey, how's it going?
Those are some big books.
Some stuff here for us to discuss. That's a good one there.
We only got 1 hour. Yeah. 1 hour, Blake.
1 hour? Yeah. I thought you said 90 minutes. 90 minutes? No?
Well, we can give you maybe 70 minutes.
Maybe 70 minutes?
Yeah.
How's it going?
Good to see you.
Good to see y'all. I just saw Jeff a little while ago, maybe a couple days ago?
Yeah, a couple of days ago. Got to see Blake in person, and it's always a pleasure to see you there. And I hope you had a great weekend, Blake, since then.
Yeah, it was nice. I drove back, and I drove through that system that came through here. That system was was crazy. Had some
Mhm.
tornadoes in Houston, and kind of came up all the way up to Kentucky. So we, I was driving through that on the way back, but yeah, everything was great. Good seeing Jim O'Brien and of course all the crew up there in Winter Family Weekend, and seeing you and Ann was great. And Mike, I know you sometimes go out there, but it's a good little event out there for sure. We appreciate all the effort that Jim goes through to make sure that we have some kind of camaraderie between the independent churches, and so yeah, it was good.
Yeah,
Fun
and
event.
I was talking to Jim. CGI is kind of like a big independent church, but in the way we operate.
It's great. That's actually a huge compliment, isn't it?
But yeah, I mean, because we definitely allow a lot of autonomy for our congregations, and we work just as God's church, and we trust people to do their best, and they do uh, their best as we have church services around the country.
Wasn't it United? United's model was originally like this. Was
Yeah,
allowing a loose federation or a loose federation of different congregations,
yeah,
but it becomes unwieldy. You start wanting to
yeah,
kind of, well, we really need to have this policy observed. We need to, kind of put
mhm,
our thumb on things. And, for
yeah.
better or worse, I think it was done with the right spirit. But yeah, I think CGI has done a good job of letting those churches make a congregational level decision on things that affect them, which is great. So
Yeah, I mean, there's a balance that we try to keep. Sometimes we're not always keeping it the right way, but we're doing our best to keep that balance in the church. And
yeah. Well, and then the other thing about CGI that's great is that it has. So let's say that's very dispersed. Well, how do you agree upon anything? Well, the STP for me is such a beautiful. It's correct. You have a document that
Mhm,
we all agree upon, and we can all write articles towards, or we can contest it. We can
mhm,
argue against it. We have this thing that brings us together,
mhm,
which allows for freedom, which allows for was maximal freedom, let's say.
mhm,
And I keep saying this over and over again. I said it at the Winter Family Weekend during our conversation at the Quality Church Initiative. Having an organizing document like that should be the model. Now, I know we have statement of beliefs. You have these things that are, declaration of faith. Those are really truncated. CGI has done a
yeah,
good job of really fleshing out their doctrines and allowing
mhm,
for. I mean, it's a catechism of sorts, right?
Yeah,
But it's
yeah.
yeah,
really important.
I believe so. It gives you something to hold on to that, hey, this is what we're all for. And then there are so many other things that you can say, hey, okay, you got that opinion over here. That as
mhm,
long as it's not affecting the STP, hey, come on in.
That's exactly right.
talk about it. But we
yeah,
are all on that STP. That's our trunk of the tree. And those
mhm,
peripheral issues, like one I think we're going to discuss
That's right.
today,
Yep.
hey, we can have different opinions
right.
and not get bent out of shape about it.
Yeah, because we have things like even the age of the Earth we don't have in our statement of beliefs. I believe in our STP. So somebody out there who thinks that Earth is young and somebody thinks it's old. There's room for those disagreements. I mean, we can have lively debates about those type of things, but we
That's
definitely
exactly right.
have room in our STP. So these are the most important things, and then there's these other things that are important, but I guess there could be issues of people having differences of opinions, and I
In
guess
the
that's what
age
you
of
have today.
in the age of censorship, this kind of model is important because it allows for us to see where the line is. There will be moments when people say things from the pulpit that are unacceptable.
Yeah.
That will need to
You know
be
what? Hey,
censored.
speaking of unacceptable, let's go ahead and bring in Skip
Oh yeah,
Martin
yeah.
with
Brought
us
this guy
today.
along.
Wow,
No,
Jeff,
excuse me.
you were too quick in that segue, Jeff.
Sorry,
Hey.
you caught me.
Like we set it
I
up here.
wasn't quite ready for this. So,
He's still.
I think you're wearing the same shirt as
I'm
Jeremiah
in my
back
Grinch
there.
shirt. Yep.
I know.
You guys are into the props this morning.
I know. It's like a comedy bit over here.
How are you doing, Skip?
Well, I was doing really well until I realized that today's Prove All Things is right in the middle of the Alabama-Michigan game.
Mm-hmm.
So, no, I'm doing good. Our little group is doing good. During the holidays, which we don't observe, nobody can come to church because they got family coming in or they're traveling, or I don't mean nobody, but it's really weird. It's like, well, we don't observe, these holidays, but we're going to cancel church because nobody's coming because all of them have family in, which is great, but it's kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of
there's a disturbance in the normal things that we do, right? I mean, kind of the water we swim in, we have to deal with it. I mean, we went to the Winter Family Weekend, which some would say, oh, well, are you observing Christmas in a backwards way? It's like, well, our kids have to do something. They're off school. They're here. They're just kind of twiddling their thumbs, so. Well,
I heard somebody say just the other day that, it was just the Church of God's way to observe Christmas. And I'm like, it's a mini feast is what it is. And people have days off, and that's why they do it this time of year.
You're getting at something, Skip and Blake, where people have different opinions on things. and I think we're going to get into that subject today, where different opinions have occurred in Christianity, as we all know. And why do those things happen? Yeah.
Sure. Well, can I tell a little anecdote, and then we can probably get into it? So in the 1934 World Series, the Cardinals traveled roaring into Detroit, and I came in on the train station, and they come up, and they're all surprised because they see all the police there standing, at attention, guarding them with their lives, kind of scratching their heads. They're like, man, you must think a lot of us, they're really protecting us with their lives here. And so they did a little digging, and the truth emerged that Detroit was told that there would be a papal, arrival of the papacy there, and a delegation, and to guard the Cardinals. And so the baseball-minded police they only knew of one Cardinal. And that was the St. Louis brand.
Okay.
And, we can only determine what something means based upon our framework, our structure, the things that we understand, things that we've experienced. And one of this topic was really Charles Gross's fault. He would tell Skip and I, Skip, he'd tell me a lot too, is that don't tell me what it means. We could probably say this together until you tell me what it meant to them.
Yeah. And that makes so much sense.
It does.
Mm-hmm. And it makes a lot of the things that we read in the scriptures have more meaning, because you're thinking, well, wait a minute, what if I was standing there? What would I have thought? And I've used this ad nauseum, but when Jesus said or anybody said something about Gehenna, today traditional Christianity thinks of ever burning hell, torture, blah blah blah. Those people thought garbage dump. It's the dump outside of Jerusalem.
Oh,
and so that's what they thought when they heard it. What do we think when we hear it? And we need to look at the whole Bible that way. I think Charles is right. Now, I don't think Charles came up with this. He's not smart enough. No, I think it's the original with Charles.
He's smart enough to make sure that we hold on to it. And I think there is a book in the Bible that's fascinating, that has caused more probably divides than any other book in the Bible, has caused Christians to just really put a lot of dates out there that they probably shouldn't have put out there. So it's been an active book, and it's the book, the Revelation by John. It's written when he was on the island of Patmos. And when was it written, guys? Do we know when was it written?
Well, I like the 90 AD idea. Again, okay. I'm not held to it, but I like it better than the earlier idea. That's just me.
I like 60 or 65 AD.
So you think it happened before the temple was destroyed, Skip?
That's kind of where we're going today.
Okay. So because when was it written? Because that kind of informs you on what people were probably thinking when they read it. Is right.
This is exactly it.
Yeah.
So it begins, right? We can't even think about, we can't even tell you when this thing was written, and without getting into, loggerheads. No, I think
Right.
that there is some evidence both ways, obviously. And, again, another person I'll attribute to this, whatever, this topic and proclivity is Vance Stinson, who is a veritable expert, by the way. Incredible. You want to, check out his last message, Revelation Revisited. Hold on for dear life, because
Yeah.
he's going to high levels of theological discussion. I mean, he's world class. Honestly, if you look at some of the breadth of work that's out there, I told him, you need to write a book, because he has a particular flavor, he calls it, kind of taking from this one and taking from that group. And anyways, he does a really good job of, I think, of substantiating why he believes what he believes. But so, yeah, I think Ron Dart was a pre-destruction of the temple date. He doesn't know when, but it was written before the destruction of the temple for reasons we'll get into later. But one of the major ones was he felt like there was no direct reference that this would have been so big. John would have had to absolutely mention this somewhere in unambiguous terms,
Right.
And the ones that are for an after destruction, that he was referencing it in a symbolic manner, that there was some kind of language he was using that indicates that. But let's go ahead and kick off what we'll call the different ways of looking at. There's different 4 or 5. One of them is broken up into 2. 5 different ways of looking at eschatology or end time events. Let's say that's what this is Christians' end time events, last days interpretations. And it's not only the book of Revelation, right? There's other prophecies in the Bible, but it does kind of seize on that book. Preterist or preterism is the idea. I do have a definition of each one. So I'll go through preterism. There's partial preterism, which is taking ideas from this way of looking at it. Historicism or historic views, futurism, and then idealism. And let's go ahead and go to the next slide, Jeff. That's going to be the one on preterism.
Yeah, well, Blake, you've got eclecticism is not really one of them, but it's kind of a.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's right. Eclectic. If you're an eclectic, which Skip is called often, it's basically just taking a lot of just from different schools of thought, right? You're a smattering of all of these things.
Yeah.
And Vance was said he'd call himself a preterofuturist idealist.
Yeah, I remember him saying that. Yes.
Yeah. What does that mean? Said he's a modified idealist, is what he goes with. But the preterist,
so maybe all these views have some merit at some point. Probably is what you're getting at.
Yeah. He says that they're all right in what they affirm, and they're all wrong in what they deny. And I thought that was a pretty brilliant way of saying it. And so, yeah, I mean, in their own right, that's what I did. I said, look, I gave these guys all their different points of view, the benefit of the doubt, and really honed in on the scriptures they use to substantiate their point of view. Let's give them an earnest, a chance to make their case, let's say. And that's what today is. I'm not trying to agree or disagree with them. I just wanted us to look at them and to understand them a little bit better. I'm still learning a lot of this stuff. I really don't know very much. But I find it very interesting because when I tumbled upon this, I go, oh yeah, there's got to be a bunch of different ways of looking at these things. And I'd always just kind of gone with what I've been told and what I've heard in sermons, very little of what I read because I hadn't really researched it. But
we have a traditional Church of God point of view that we've always kind of supported or promoted, or it's kind of taught in the different churches of God.
And I think that's it seems to be that's a futurist point of view, that all these events, all of them, are out there in the future. They have not come to pass at all. Everything that John's talking about is ahead of us.
Right.
So, but yeah, we'll look at that a little closer and kind of see if that's. I don't like big sweeping generalizations, right? I mean, that's kind of. I feel like that kind of puts people in a pigeonhole, and Ron Dart would say it diminishes any kind of discovery. Or once you have all these doctrines wrapped up with a nice little bow, you put it up on a shelf. You don't continue to explore, to continue to grow, and that's not a good thing. But yeah, the first one we'll talk about is preterism. And it's a Christian view or belief that interprets some, which is partial preterism. So some of these things, or all, full preterism
Mm-hmm.
of these prophecies in the Bible as events which have already been fulfilled in history. So the full preterist says every single thing you read in Revelation, it's back then, it's been done,
Mm-hmm.
already been completed. And then
Blake, does that include Revelation 18, 19, 20?
it does. So I looked into that more and more because we
Really?
talked about
Wow.
that. Like, what about us?
Yeah.
Because that's already come to pass, right? For them. Apparently, you and I, Skip, when we die, we get our new bodies and we just go straight up. Bling, bling. That's what
Mhm.
they think. Like, just
So
straight.
they think the judgment has already happened and the 1,000-year reign of Christ has happened.
Yep, all of it. All of it was completed.
But not a pre-preterist, which I'm sure he'll get into.
Yeah, partial preterist.
I mean, partial. Sorry.
Partial preterist gets up to like Revelation 19, and then they're like,
Yeah.
all right, here seems to be a bit of a,
Mhm.
has to be out there in the front of us.
Right.
Great white throne judgment, New Jerusalem, new heaven, new earth. They can't possibly see how that's come to pass already, which I agree with.
Yeah.
Partial preterism is the one that I lean into, and I think Skip and I both lean into the most.
Mm-hmm.
That John was both talking to them there,
Right.
and then he's also talking to us now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what Charles Gross
Yeah.
is as well.
Well, I mean, isn't there's a duality, the prophecy that we've always talked about, a duality that you
Yeah.
can read different things into it at different times. And so something that may have been a fulfillment for them, there may be a greater fulfillment in the later end times.
Exactly. Very good. And Skip brought this up yesterday. What about our dualism that we have? And we do have a type and anti-type
Mm-hmm.
model where we say, look, this is things that are symbolic in a way. And so that's exactly right. I wondered how that all fit into all this as well. I haven't really fleshed out what title that would be under, if that's a partial preterist. I think if I had to make a stab at it, it's either A, an idealist, which is we'll get into that in a second, or B, it's a partial preterist view, depending on the thing we're talking about or the prophecy we're talking about.
Well, I guess an event that happened in history was when the destruction of the temple occurred, I guess in 70 AD. And so a lot of people, like even the Gospels, they say, well, these Gospels were written afterwards because we have Christ talking about the abomination of desolation and those type of things and predicting a future. So though some people try to say, oh, that's just they just knew that happened, so that's why they put that in there, kind of thing.
Scholars, for sure. Scholars like that because it's nice and neat and it doesn't gets away from the supernatural.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of scholars are preterist. A majority of scholars in academia believe that John was, wrote this after the destruction of the temple, had all the pieces, had all the events, had all the names, so to speak, and he just put them in their proper place. Sorry, turn that off. And so that's, it helped, for them, it makes sense because, he just wrote this after the fact and made it seem like he knew it ahead of time.
Yeah, but I think that if you put the other prophetic books into the discussion with Revelation, you got some problems with saying that everything has already happened, in my opinion. And I think that's what some of these scholars don't do. They read each book I talked to an intellectual once on this subject, and he was focused on, well, that individual book was written by this individual person, and your idea of putting all these books together and compiling them and using them as one book, that's not how he was looking at it. And I think that's wrong. I think that you've got to believe that God used his Holy Spirit to influence all those writers to connect all these dots that the Bible does for this fuller story that has not been completely written yet.
I agree. I think that it's hard to do that and then to not try to predict or try to see these things as specific people. And we have a line, that the Church of God has an addiction for prediction. Because I get it. It's like you see these things, they're there. You go, oh, this has got to be, this has got to be the Roman Catholic Church. This has to be, Germany. I don't know. There's these things, and I get it. But I agree with you. I think that God did, he pulled together all these individual books. They're individual books, so 66 individual books that we've compiled them together.
Mm-hmm.
They're cross-referential, right? So they reference one another. They have this cohesion that can be told as a story that makes sense, which is by how many different authors, right? And they also have this way to have also the prophecies being fulfilled. Like you said, if you bring in some of the Old Testament books, some of the prophecies about Jesus, you have a hard time squaring that as being, written retroactively or to the retro edits. And then you also have...
well, what people say, they say that Jesus knew about these prophecies, so he kind of tried to self-fulfill them.
Even if he did, let's say he did. Let's say he did. The way that he had to fulfill them is incredible. I mean, I thought about that. Even if he did, he had all of it. There's no way one individual, unless you're God, could have completed all of those prophecies, all those different messianic types to come.
Right.
That was the one thing. Is like all these messianic types. There was the suffering servant. There was the conquering king. There was all these different things that I think, in a way, he fulfilled all of those prophecies.
Yeah.
Which should blow your mind. And
but on that point, also, there were some prophecies that all the religious intelligentsia of his time were not aware of that were related to the Messiah. There were some that they knew were related, but there were others that they had no idea that they were related, and he had to explain that to people.
That's amazing. Yeah, you're right. I'm sure that they didn't have... I mean, we think of this as like they had their King James Version Bible, right? It's like, no, they had all these disparate groups with all these, like, their scrolls and and they didn't get canonized until many years later after the fact. So, anyways, I think that there is... And also, let's keep in mind this isn't necessarily salvational issues, right? Prophecy is something that we were talking about earlier, that when it comes to pass, we know that God is sovereign, that he is in control. In other words, it's in a rear view mirror thing. It's something that we look back upon, or to look and to watch. But let's steady our hand and not try to predict names, dates, groups, because it does seem to get us into some trouble. As we've seen, some doctrines can kind of get out of control, I think, in some ways.
Yeah, I guess one of the things maybe all these views have in common is that God has the victory, whether it's now, later, or to come, or whatever. That there's still the message of God's victorious. There's salvation in Christ, and his kingdom and stuff.
Amen. Yeah, I think that's for sure, and that's one thing that they're brothers and sisters in Christ. They have faith in Jesus Christ. They call him the Messiah, and so we can all agree on that. We all have that common ground across the board here: preterist, or a futurist, or even the historicist. So this is the first one. If you want to go to the next slide. This is going to be the historicism, or the historist, and they basically place Revelation within the context of history. And it's still yet to be... It's probably the most exciting of all of them. If you were to take one, it's really exciting because this is identifying figures and the rise of the Ottoman Empire and the rise and fall of the papacy. They have all the seals and all of the trumpets. Which, by the way, for them, there's only one left. So that's really exciting. We have to be in the last days. This has to be it. But this is a view that was commonly held by the early church, then among its predecessors to Protestantism. And so I think William Miller was one of the proponents of this idea. The Seventh-day Adventists have a strong historicist point of view as well. Which is... we came out of that movement, by the way, right? The Church of God. So, I think a lot of our beliefs, we say we're futurists, but there's a lot of historicism in the standard Church of God explanation of things. We don't believe it in CGI about the church errors, but there is that belief that these, when the letters to each church is a specific, like time and place, or like a type of the church or whatever.
Eras. There's a lot of the different churches of God that still believe in eras.
Yeah.
and we did too. I don't think any of you all go back to Worldwide Church of God days, do you?
Not me.
No, not me.
Yeah, see, I do. I go back to '74, so I heard a lot of this stuff, and some of the stuff I had to absolutely laugh at was there was one quote evangelist that put HWA in a certain spot and GTA in a certain spot, and I don't know if you all have read about any of that stuff, but we just
I read about some speculation about things like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the dispensationalism idea came out of this for sure. This whole thing that these weren't necessarily specific churches that John was writing to. No. What was actually being said here is these were going to be an explanation of church eras, and all the way up to the Laodicean common, lukewarm church of Christianity that we have today. Which
the only thing I don't know if I necessarily believe that, but kind of it feels like we are in Laodicea today. Is that the only thing that gets me? Is that it seems that way, right?
I mean, is there not any truth to what they're saying?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah,
I mean,
I get that, but again, do we know every individual Christian in the world today and what's really in their intent and heart?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. We definitely don't believe that the Nicolaitans are the descendants or the worshipers of Saint Nicholas, which is what I heard that that was a common belief in the church. And again, that's just because you have to know all of these, who these players are and who these people are, and I think Vance does a good job of showing that these were. A follower of a group of, I think he brought up a name of who it might be, but it was in connection with Balaam, and how, these are people that are essentially circumventing the law of God, that they are trying to compromise the faith by kind of, finding a way around it. And he kind of does a good job. And if you want to listen to that message, but anyways, there's a lot of different things that can go wrong when you try to put a specific name on these people and who they are, and especially church eras, because who are we always when people are discussing that? Which church are we? We're always Philadelphia.
Always.
I mean, if you want to be like describe your church, if you try to describe it as Philadelphia because that's the best church, right?
Yeah, the 1-2 church. No one's ever said, "Well, I joined the not 1-2 church. That was too big for me. It's too much for me. I joined the."
Yeah. Have you ever heard anybody say, well, where do you go to church? Oh, I go to the wrong church.
I go to the apostate church.
Yeah.
Said no one ever. Yeah. So I mean, you got to be humble.
You know what? Of all the churches of God out there, there is not one single church of God that's named the Laodicean Church of God.
That's true.
Yeah, what would you do? What would you think if you read that? You go, what's wrong with these people? Oh gosh. So yes, that's the historicist view. If you want to go to the next slide, then there is the futurist. Now, futurism is an approach that treats the Book of Revelation as mostly unfulfilled prophecy taking place in some determined future date. Undetermined being the operative word there. And so, they look at all these things as out there in front of us. The danger of this point of view for me is it some days away our faith. What do I mean by that? Well, it's constantly out there, right? It's not the immediacy of it is lost somewhat because you're constantly looking at how it's out there, it's to come. Now, that's not what everyone does. Some people say, hey, look, it's out there in the future. How exciting, when it's going to be great. And that's great. It causes some people to really perk up, that this wasn't, done and over with back in the day, like the preterists would say.
Like, wouldn't futurists teach a duality also, pretty much? It happened and it's going to happen again.
I don't think so. I think that's the partial preterist. I think the futurist is really just that this is all things that have yet to come. So
for instance, Babylon the Great, or that's described. That's not something that was in the Roman Empire. That's something in a future empire that's yet to come.
Correct.
Right.
Mhm.
But in that, I could see where they may have seen that as a type that was there, and maybe they thought that it was coming soon. But we looking back on all of this history now know that form of Babylon, you could say Rome was a type of Babylon, because again, a type has characteristics that are similar, but it can have many characteristics that are different. So again, getting back to the dualism point that you guys were making, there's not just dualism in some prophecy. You can see a tripling of some prophecies
You're speaking
in the
about the next
Bible
one.
also. So I really like the idea of typology. I'm going to do a future Truth Unveiled on it, where I think that's an important thing for us to understand. Not to say that I got it all figured out, but if we don't understand typology, we're going to miss a lot of things about the Bible and our understanding.
Yeah, that's you're explaining the next one, which is called idealism, which is that there are types, or there is a particular set of characteristics of a group.
Can we move ahead to that slide, Blake?
Yes, that's the next one. Go ahead and move on to the next one. Yeah. And so idealism is the non-literal approach, right? So, not trying to get into specific names and events and people or groups, but and many other names, such as not spiritualism, but they're called spiritualist. I hesitate to even use the word because people start to go somewhere else, but there's a movement called spiritualism, which is very similar to this, which is that they interpret the book of Revelation that sees all or most of the imagery of the book as symbolic. That idealism is common among Reformed theologians, and it is associated with amillennialism, and there exists a degree of idealism. The most radical form sees it as an entirely symbolic. In other words, there's no specific names that come to mind at all. There's no groups. You can't name the Roman Catholic Church as the beast, right? Which you could say, well, is the Roman Catholic Church the beast power? Sure it is. Is it the only one that we've seen of that type? No, we've seen other types of beast powers, I would say, that where you have religion and governmental power and authority wrapped into the same organization. That's the beast power. And that's what you would say. You've seen that model before, and we will see it again, by the way. Now, Mike said something really great, which is because if you don't know what it looks like, you're going to miss it when it comes up. So I think this is probably the best case for why we should study it, is so that we can recognize it and discern it when it arrives.
Yeah. Hey, great point there. I want to jump on is that, people who poo-poo looking at prophecy, what they're missing though is when we do get to the real end, I think that some understanding of prophecy may open up the truth of the Bible to people to confess Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior at that time. And I think the Bible even says that. So that's why I do feel it is important, but it shouldn't be the primary concern of a Christian in their day-to-day lives.
Well, the book of Ezekiel, Ezekiel wrote, 8 or 10 times. He wrote, when this comes to pass, then you will know.
Yes, great point, Skip.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And Ron Dart would say that's in one way, that's a point of, the point of prophecy is that, not to be able to be the smartest guy in the room and to tell you, who the beast power is, or who's, where the place of safety is. That's not the point.
And what about this idea that think about when most people, what we believe will be saved is during the second resurrection time period. Won't they know that all of these prophecies came true finally, and they can see it all laid out in front of them as a further proof that this is God, man. You better get with the program.
Do you think they're going to know? They're going to know.
Yeah, I feel that they will. Now I believe Satan is released to try to get some of them, but I think God is wanting to win the game in a sense, and he's going to use all of the things that he can to get more of them into his fold than are going to fall into the other fold. And I think he will utilize that concept of fulfilled prophecy
Sure.
as one other tact in his list of how he's trying to save humanity.
Reminds me of the encounter between Jesus and James. Blessed are you, James, for you have seen and you believe, but more blessed is the one who has not seen and believes. And that puts us in that camp of, we have not seen, right? And we believe. But when that does come down, I think they will believe. They will see, and when they will say, oh, my Lord and my God, Rabboni, and that will be a moment for a lot of people, gives me goosebumps, that will be because I remember my moment when I go, oh, you are Lord. And that moment is such a beautiful and amazing moment. You cross the Rubicon, and I've arrived. I'm here with you, Lord. And I love that. And I think I agree. Yeah. At that moment, they will absolutely know. So there exists a degree of idealism that in the most radical forms of these people of idealistic points of view, it's all symbolic. There's no specifics, which I don't agree with. Where a more
I've heard somebody explain the two witnesses in an idealistic way, where they say, "Oh, the two witnesses are the Old and New Testament that witness about God."
I've heard that.
Have you heard that? Yeah. So I said that would probably fall under idealism. Now that I think about it,
it would. Yeah.
My son-in-law and daughter go to a mainstream traditional church, and their church teaches that all of the book of Revelation is spiritual. None of that happened. None of it will happen. It's just, it was a vision that John had. It was a dream. Let's put it that way. John was dreaming, and that it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that, Skip. There are a lot of Christians out there who are getting into those kind of concepts. And again, when I look at the other prophetic books of the Bible, you got to start saying, well, all this stuff is basically symbolic, which I don't believe at all.
Yeah.
I do believe Jesus Christ was a prophecy at some point. He was a literal person who lived on earth. I believe when he comes again, that's literally happening. I do believe in two literal witnesses, etc.
Yeah. And there's something about all the other, when you take all the prophecy together, I guess as probably futurists, but there's some all this other mixed into that, is that when you put Daniel together, Revelation, you can see more about these kingdoms. And like there's this, the kingdoms are history. And what is he talking about in this piece? Because you have those things that come together, or you put it together with Ezekiel or what we read in Zechariah. All these things, when you put them together, you get maybe a bigger picture of what this might be.
Yeah, I think you definitely, when you read, and that's what was so compelling for me about the Church of God church, was it had a way of looking at it that seemed to really make sense of all of these things when taken on balance. No other church really does that. Every time you get through their doctrines and there's something really wacky that all of a sudden comes up, I'm like, this doesn't really make sense to me. It doesn't really pass the smell test. And it seems like, as for better or worse, that Herbert put his finger on a lot of the I think the good doctrine that was coming out at that time in that place. He was able to really become, I think he was inspired personally, and I think that he was under the guise of the Holy Spirit, had, him being led in a way, but he was also human like all of us. So there was some things that weren't necessarily the best. But let's not throw the baby out the bathwater, right? Let's continue to build on the shoulders of giants, is my estimation. Some really great stuff came out of the movement, and we can still keep looking at this closer and closer.
Right.
Now, the idealist will say that there's also another aspect of idealism which has a moderate view, which may allow for some historical fulfillment of those events. In other words, they recognize that there's a description of maybe human being behavior, like typical human being behavior that they see, that gets repeated all the time, age after age. There is a type of beast power. There's a type of, these things that show up. And so that not every age, but, just to notice these things when they happen, that they're more archetypes or types than just, one specific event, one specific group, one person, one time period. So yeah, those are the points of view. I thought we'd go through a couple of them each individually and give them, what scriptures do they use to substantiate why they have this point of view, that framework. And then we don't have to agree or disagree. I'm sure we won't be able to help ourselves. Just ask questions about, well, this doesn't make sense. But the next one should show the preterist
Scripture.
Blake, there's something I'd like to say real quick. And you three have been around me enough to know how I feel about this. But one of the reasons that I wanted to go through this, and I'm just learning, I mean, I'm barely learning, is I think it's very important that we look at the way we look at other churches' beliefs. Let me bring that down to individuals, to other people and their beliefs. Whether we agree with them or not, we need to know what they believe, and we need to know why they believe it, so we can have just a plain old conversation with them without getting in a fight.
I totally agree with your point, Skip.
I think I'll go ahead and say something else about that, which is we were talking about the Quality Church Retreat. One of the best things a Christian can do for evangelism is to be able to talk about one's faith with conviction. You have to know why you believe what you believe. You have to have what the kids call the receipts in your own mind of why you believe the things that you believe. And then if you're settled in that, if you're calm, you're collected, you're at peace with understanding that, you can have a civil conversation with someone who's a Calvinist or whatever, that believes in predestination, and just kind of get curious. See, because you're confident, you're collected, you know what you believe, you know where you stand with God. So now you actually can get curious about why do you believe that? What is it about predestination that you really enjoy? What is it something that you think that is really helps you out in your faith? And then you can just listen. Like Skip says, I tell them how I see it. They tell me how they see it, and then we move on.
Yeah, great point. You could also bring up a great big hole with that idea that God's decided for everybody already. You can make a good point about why that isn't true.
I don't agree with it. I really am curious as to people who seem there's some people that are very smart that believe in it. I'm just wonder how someone could believe that. And I don't mean it as being with contempt. Contempt is different than disagreement. Contempt is not only are you wrong, but you should have known better. And that's terrible. We should never have contempt for our brothers and sisters.
No doubt about it. I once I did the research into that, I saw where they used certain scriptures, and I saw some scriptures I wasn't aware of that they used, that I could see, well, if you just had these and were taught this, you definitely could go down that road. But I had a different take on some of those scriptures, and there were other scriptures that I would use that they did not use in that subject.
Yeah, well, that's what we're going to go through in earnest, right? Not straw man them, but Iron Man them, as I would always mispronounce or misquote, steel man them for their side, because I think once you understand, like you just said, they have these scriptures that they use and go, oh, that's why you think this. No, I don't agree, but now I understand a little bit more. And as Dennis Prager would say, sometimes clarity is all you're going to get. You're not going to get agreement. You're going to get clarity. And I thought
we got to be okay with not getting agreement, because a lot of people in the church, they want you to agree with them.
They have to. There's this compulsion, you have to, and then they kill you off. Then they're like, you're no longer my brother, or something extreme, right? You're an apostate. I'm going to shake my sandals off on you, dusting my feet off on you. It's like you've just lost love for your brother for a non-salvational issue. Like, who's in the wrong here? I'm serious. We should. This is not just a helpful thing for evangelism, but it's also a helpful thing to not break any commandments as well, which I know we hold these in high regard. So the preterists would use Matthew 24:34 to substantiate why they believe these prophecies, all the things that John wrote about, were all completed and written and fulfilled within, let's say, 100 years, right? By 100 AD. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things have taken place. You know, so leave some questions as to what generation means, maybe. What it means to come to pass.
Yeah, and some people could argue, well, Jesus is talking about the generation that sees the things he's talking about. When you see the things I'm talking about, that generation will not pass away until these come place. So that would be our futurist view of that.
Yeah, and this is where duality comes in.
Right.
It really did happen. They saw it, and
Exactly.
yet we see it as a future. We're futurists, aren't we, Blake?
Yeah, we have future smatterings for sure.
Right.
Right. But here's the thing where you got to look at all the scriptures on the subject, because when you look at all the scriptures on that context of Matthew 24, you see that he's not just talking about the destruction of the temple, but he's also talking about the end of the age. So he's talking about a couple things within this context.
And Charles would tell you he's talking to them. He's not talking to you.
Well, see, I don't agree with Charles 100% on that. Okay?
Yeah, I know.
I get his.
I push back a little bit too. I say, well, then let's just throw the Bible out then, right? Because it's just to a bunch of people that are dead now. I get a little out there, but no, I just say,
all right. So it's not just me that you don't agree with, Mike?
Yeah, I don't agree with Charles on everything.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a healthy organization right there, then.
Yeah, and that goes both ways.
We're looking at this. We need to kind of come to a point here. We're looking at why they believe this. We don't have to argue with it. This is why they believe.
Yeah, right.
Good point, Skip. Yeah.
There's value in understanding how they would have thought about this when the author was writing to them. Why did they choose the words they chose? What kind of proclivities, or what kind of milieu or whatever, the kind of norms, the kind of cultural norms would they have had that their mind would have been drawn to Gehenna being the dump out there, right? I mean, there's things that they're primed in their mind that they would have been picking up on.
Yeah.
And Charles is saying, once you can understand that, you can then apply it to our day, because we're not so different than who they were, right? We still have the same frustrations. We have the same trials in a lot of ways, There's still a government that's kind of, overreaching. There's all these things that we share as far as concerns that we can still apply to us today. But but first you have to understand what it meant to them. So the other one is Revelation 1:1, the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show to his servants the things that must soon take place. Again, the predator says, see, look here, it's supposed to be soon. We'll get into something which is, you read a couple more chapters in, and then it kind of moves to another phase, right?
Right.
Might be soon right then in that portion, but then it moves to another. Then it says in Revelation 11, rise and measure the temple of God and the altar and those who worship there. So this suggests that the temple was still standing. How can you get up and measure something that's not there? And I think this is what R.D. really hung his hat on, which he felt like it would be almost disingenuous to write this sentence without it still standing. It just seems, and who knows? I mean, I don't know, but
that's definitely a good point. Good point.
It's a good point, but again, I'll fall back on the idea that this is a vision. We're into chapter 11 at this point, and he's making it clear prior to this that it's not just a vision about now, at least in my mind. Okay.
Yeah. I've always thought about that as the temple that was going to be built later. That's the way maybe we've looked at it in the Church of God as that particular temple.
So I feel like I mean without knowing much more about a description, I would say it probably is the one that was still there. I see both sides. I'm going to say that I still fall on, because I'm an RD fanatic. I still come on a destruction. And again, it doesn't. For me, it might shape a little bit of the communications there, but I feel like the thrust of the book, which is, by the way, good versus evil. That's the point of the revelation, as the good versus evil writ large, right? And good wins. let's say, let's go very high level. Let's not get caught up in the small details here. But anyways, Revelation 17, 9 through 10, the 7 heads or 7 mountains on which the woman is seated at this place in time was interpreted as Rome, the city on 7 hills.
Right. Yeah.
I bristle a little bit at that proof just because it feels like you can put all these pieces, in the right place. If you need to see them in a right angle, what would a hill be considered? I don't know. There just seems to be, I can see it, but again, these specifics usually get me a little.
I understand your points, but we can disagree on these things.
Yeah, again, you could get into the duality concept here. Well, yeah, that was ancient Rome, but you know what? Some people think there's a connection to ancient Rome and what's going to happen in the future. Again, I don't know, but that's something you could discuss. Yeah,
it's okay to hold that in your mind. You can hold 2 conflicting points of view in your mind and consider them. You know what I mean? That's totally possible. Yeah. That's how we grow and we learn, is to think these things through. And so I think that very well could be. Do I think it's the only one? No, I think there's other types of Rome. There's other types of
Jerusalem, a place that sits on 7 hills.
Sits on a hill for sure. Yeah. I don't know if it's, but Revelation 13:18 says this calls for wisdom. Let the one who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Now, you've heard this, that it's through gematria that you can actually, which is the study of how Hebrew, when broken down into its numeric counterparts, right? Each character has a numeric value that when you put them together, they come up with a number, and that Nero, his name, when you break it down to Hebrew, which is kind of strange. So I guess how would you do that? If it was written originally in Greek, do you? So I didn't look too much into this. I don't know. Yeah. Does anyone know about the logic behind how Nero is the 666 value?
I've read it. I've read it, but I forget the details. But I will tell you that I've read a number of other individuals in history where they use different forms of breakdown of the number in the alphabet to come up with other individuals. Yeah. And again, this for me, this hits the dual idea that in general it could be the number of a man, 6 that's incomplete, 7 is complete. That men are incomplete, but I could get Nero also. However, they got it. Yeah, Nero was a type. This is getting into that type idea that I have also. So yeah, there's so much that we could talk about.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, this is kind of where they hang their hat. This is why they feel like, look, there it is. That's him. And they put all these people. I think it was Dr. James Tabor who said, be careful though. He said, because all predictions thus far have been 100% wrong, at least as far as the last, the coming day, right? Has a 0% success rate. So be careful. There's some things around Tabor that, anyways. Yeah.
The Bible is 100%. It's just the people's interpretation of the Bible is not right.
But so that's preterism. That's some of the text. That's some of the ideas that they use to substantiate why they feel like John was writing to them there, only to them there, and that it was all fulfilled within about 100 years.
Hey, a good analogy to this is when you look at the first century, the religious intelligentsia at that time, the people that knew the most about Scripture, they got a big thing really wrong. So we better be humble enough to know we don't have it all figured out.
That's exactly right. And I think humility it goes a long way, especially if you are competent. If you're competent, you have nothing to worry about, and if you're serving God, humbly, I think that you look at these things, they're interesting, and you're able to talk about them. You're able to notice them. You're able to teach them. But you should always be able to say those 3 little words, Skip. What are they?
I don't know.
No, you know them. That they're three little words.
Yeah.
So
We don't
Revelation,
know.
we don't know. That's right, and to be okay with that, and that's that we have faith in God, and that's exactly it. Revelation 20:11-15. This is the partial preterists. So remember, these are the people that they believe that yes, John was writing to them there, but he was also writing to us now. There's some items in there that have not been fulfilled yet, namely getting up to Revelation 19, right? Getting into the great white throne, the judgment. There's all these things that are yet to pass, and so they I think they're more balanced, and I feel like I agree with them the most. But I also have smatterings of all of these. I have a lot of them that I borrow from. Then I saw a great white throne and him who's seated on it, and the dead were judged by what was written in the books. And my question is, what does the preterists say to this? I mean, when did they feel like this happened?
Yeah.
And I wish I had an answer for that. I'm learning more and more, but that would be my immediate question.
Yeah,
Do
maybe
we
spiritualized away.
Yeah, maybe spiritualized the way that once you accept Christ, you're judged there or something. I've read things like that.
Yeah. Doesn't the Seventh-day Adventists believe in something called investigative judgment or something where Jesus left certain part of heaven and went to another part of heaven, and now this fulfills something in Revelation, and they call it investigative judgment. So people can make up stuff to think,
Yeah, that tried to overcome another issue that they had, so they came up with that.
Yeah.
That's pretty typical, right? We have one issue, so now we kind of create this other little doctrine, and then this other doctrine has to is a little out of sync with the other one, so we're going to create this
Jehovah's
little
Witnesses
modifier.
did it with 1914. That it was an invisible coming, and taking over.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. I've heard of that. So this refers to the final judgment seen as a future event. Of course, that's, then we have Revelation 21:1-4. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. I mean, again, maybe this is like the new age. I don't know how they really square this other than that it has not yet happened yet. And it's commonly held that it is interpreted as the ultimate renewal of creation yet to come.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to understand what they think, but we could definitely disagree.
Sure.
Yeah.
I know we're going to answer a little bit over the hour here, so just quickly.
Yeah, let's go ahead and go through these. Yeah.
Yeah. 1 Corinthians 15, 51 through. I mean, again, this is just a future events of the resurrection of the dead that has not yet happened. Which we could look around and go, our sweet loved ones are not alive right now. They haven't been resurrected. It's kind of hard to square that one, but okay. The next one.
All right.
Next slide. Historicism. What?
Did you draw that?
This is actually from a book that's sitting on my counter or on my little table over here. It's called "The Greatest Book in the World on Dispensationalism," and it's written by Clark Larkin, and he drew that. I thought those are pretty interesting drawings, but I don't. Again, this is all about putting people in places and dates and times, and of course the Daniel 7 prophecy about Nebuchadnezzar and Babylon, and moving on to Cyrus and the Medo-Persians, right? The statue, right? Alexander and the Macedonians, getting into, anyways, it's putting all these empires in their. Now, could it be that? I think it could be, for sure. I think it probably is, for sure. It is. But is that the only type? Again, I think it's back into the type thing, right? I think there are other types that will fill this as well.
Well, we get into Daniel. I mean, Daniel specifically told Nebuchadnezzar what of the image, what that meant. So you are the king of kings, and then there's going to be a king. There's going to be a king after you, and so there is a historical fulfillment to that prophecy, because I would say, because that's what he says. That's what he tells Nebuchadnezzar about.
I agree. Yeah, I mean it's pretty clear. And then there is the 7 letters to the churches are interpreted as stages in church history. We talked about this dispensationalism, church eras. Again, we've kind of pointed that there's some problems with that. Just because I think, for one, it doesn't address, it glosses over the fact that those churches were there at that place and time. There was, they were real churches. Is this not anything to say to them there at all? The historicist says no. This is, all about telling them what's going to come. So,
what would we be if we say these are just for everybody to learn from? What would that? What kind of label will that be? Is that more of a symbolic or
is that eclectic?
Probably idealist, I would say. Is again, there's essentially good lessons to be learned from understanding these types of behaviors and these types of groups, and it's good. It's good to understand them. It's for everyone at all time and places. I would say, if I had to take a stab at it.
Yeah, I think in Church of God, maybe we kind of come like Vance was saying, we have parts of all of these in kind of what we believe,
And I think it's a mature point of view, right? I think that's good because you again, I dislike being put in a box. I'm sure a lot of people do. You're just a partial preterist. You're just, a futurist. Said was a little bit of derision.
Is there a box?
You're so far out of the box, Skip, you don't even recognize there is a box.
No, but Skip's making a good point. Who defines these things and says, are we going to say, well, the Catholics get to define it, or the Orthodox get to define it, or the Protestants get to define it? Of course not, Well,
we're in the business to, again, borrow another line from Ron Dart, we're in the business of drawing lines, and I draw this line over here, I'm over here and you're over there. And I'm a part of this church, which means you have to come over here and join our church on this side of this line. And that means you have to give us the money, because that's what, that's the group here. Right. And so, sometimes it's, it's something can be kind of sinister, which is you create this wedge issue intentionally. He was of the mind that there are people who come out with wedge issues just to clip some out of the herd, and make their own little church, have some little spinoff of, Hal Lindsey comes to mind. God rest his soul. He died a couple months ago, 95 years old.
I read that on obituary in the newspaper. It hit me like, wow, Hal Lindsey. I didn't know he was still alive,
Yeah, man.
And this is the guy, Hal Lindsey, that all this was going to take place in his lifetime.
Yeah, blood moons and all that. And
1980s. In the 1980s, he wrote a good big book about it,
Yeah.
But so there's the churches there. Revelation 6:1. We'll just cover this last one, and then we'll conclude. There's other. I have a couple others, but we'll save it for next time, as we always say. And Revelation 9:1-11. The locusts are interpreted as the rise of Islam in the 7th century. I thought those were helicopters, Apache helicopters.
Yeah. Wow. I'm reading Revelation 9 right now, and I got real issues with that. Yeah.
I don't. Islam or helicopters doesn't make sense to me. I think there's something else, but
well, and then of course, artists say, the guy's in vision. He's recognizing this as something that he would have recognized again against his framework. They look like locusts. I think they're actually drones. That's what they really are. They're little drones.
Big, those drones that people are seeing over New Jersey. They're seeing those.
Let's figure it out, guys. Let's start a church. The Drone Church of God. We drone on and on. All right. So Revelation 17:1-18, the harlot represents corrupt religious systems, often linked to the medieval papacy.
That's something we kind of teach and agree with that a little bit.
I agree with that.
I think there's something to that. Yeah.
Again, there's an end time fulfillment of that, but is that there's this, the beast is that false religious system, and something at the end is going to be a greater fulfillment of that. Is what we kind of always kind of think. If we're right.
Yeah, Jeff, I would agree.
Yeah. Vance says, you look at this as being when you have a strong pooling of religious power with political power or with governmental authority. And again, that's exactly what the Roman Catholic Church was for many years.
Mhm.
And in a way, it still is. Now it's diminished in its power, let's say, but there will be another type. Now, religion can be a lot of things. You know, the environmentalists wouldn't say they're religious, but they are. They're probably the most religious
Mhm.
individuals around. You know, environmentalists and all these things. They believe in this kind of Gaiaism and, you know, this
Mhm.
pan, what do they call it? Anyways, there's like earth worship, right?
Right.
So I think it will. I don't think that people will know that it's a religion. There's this joke that, you know, the left, you know, is kind of anyway, I shouldn't be political, but yeah, there's some people who feel like,
Yeah.
you know, believe the science and all this stuff, that
Yeah.
it's kind of a form of
So I'll be
religion.
fair. I'll be fair and balanced and say that some people believe the right is also religion too. So
Yeah, sure.
there's generally, you know, people look at it that way.
Well, thanks for letting
So
me
it's
get into
a viewpoint.
some nerdy stuff today. You know,
Oh yeah,
again,
very.
the disclaimers, these are not salvational issues, y'all. You can rest assured that if you, you know, misinterpret, you know, what these symbols are, you know, you're not going to end up in Gehenna hellfire. You'll just be in a trash dump.
Yeah.
But no, I think it's fun. It's interesting. It does help us, like, you know, Mike said, to recognize it when it does come to pass. So that's important. And
Yeah.
especially if you're in a leadership capacity, it's something that maybe even warrants you to study it a little closer. But yeah, fun stuff. Thanks for the input.
Yeah. Yes, it's definitely good to read Revelation, meditate on Revelation, think about these things, but know that our interpretation is not going to be the interpretation of it. You know, if we try to say, hey, we've got it all figured out, there's been so many people who've thought that, and they've uh, have been proved wrong and wrong time after time. So it's better, you know, just to know it, know that what the truths of it, and know it will come to pass. We know God will do what He said He'll do. Just most likely we won't be there when it happens. Because I was reading Revelation recently, and I was like, you know what? Like a third of the people get wiped out, you know, from this plague or whatever. Well, I guess they don't really know what's going on because they got wiped out, and then another quarter of the people get killed. I guess they don't know what's going on either because they get killed, so they don't make it
Oh,
through
yeah.
that. So there's a few people who maybe even make it through some of these plagues and stuff to even, like, you know, be there the whole time, and most likely most of us wouldn't even be there.
Sure.
Great. I get that point, Jeff,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
and I acknowledge that. I also
Yeah.
feel that the people that are left, though,
Yeah.
that if we continue talking about these subjects, again, not
Yeah.
as the primary focus,
Right.
but we still talk about these things because some of
Yeah.
these things interested me to get into the church and learn more about Jesus Christ because of prophecy. I came to learn more about Christ and how I should live my life day to day. So I think it's important to at least address these things from time to time
Oh, absolutely.
and give people different ideas about possibilities within this realm rather than saying, oh, we know, or we're definitive about, we got to watch that. No doubt about it. No doubt.
There are people who will live through it, and there could be people watching this program that's going through it, like on YouTube, like whenever the future is, and they're like going back and we're trying to figure out what's going on. So maybe they're watching programs like this, trying to figure out, hey, what are these guys think
It
about it? You
stays
know?
on the internet, right?
Yeah, because we could be on YouTube 200 years from now, and somebody could pull this up in the archive and say, what do those guys think about this particular thing?
No,
What do
you're
y'all
right.
think?
And the booklets that we write and put out there, they're going to be out there in perpetuity, I hope.
Yeah. As long as our civilization stays together until this happens, you know.
Where do you all think you fit in? I know where Blake and I think we fit in. Where do you two think you fit in?
Fit into the list there?
Which one of these boxes?
Well, I wouldn't put myself.
Yeah.
I'm all or nothing in a box. I definitely can. I've heard Ben speak about this in the past that there's some truth in all of these, but I think there's more truth in some of them than others.
Yeah.
He's an idealist, right? I mean, I think Mike would probably be a typologist, that he really feels like there's a strong emphasis on modeling on these things, types and antitypes. and that, because you've mentioned it several times. This reason why.
Yeah, but no doubt, I can also see some history. I can also see some of this has already occurred.
Right.
Some, no doubt. I can pull something from everything. Yeah.
That's the way I am, Mike. It's just like, understanding from all those different points of view. Because again, there's stuff definitely that's like, hey, this has to be a future fulfillment, right? There's not a new heaven and new earth. This has to be the kingdom of God coming.
Yeah, I think the Church of God, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but the Church of God, if it's in the one main model there is, we believe most of that is coming out in the future.
Yeah.
There could be connections to the past, no doubt about it, but we definitely are looking for that fulfillment in the future based on other prophecies and other books,
Yeah, that's where I stand. We kind of with Mike. I don't know. Again, where do you stand, Blake and Skip? Just to get y'all's on it.
We're eclectic. Eclectic is what you guys are too. It's there's taking from a lot of them, and understanding that for me, I lean most heavily into idealism. That these are psychological profiles, archetypes of people and groups that typically come back up over and over again. Because God knows human beings and their hearts. He's the only one that can tell you how this is going to happen over and over again, just because of human behavior.
Yeah, I'm also pretty much eclectic, but I really like the partial preterist, because the partial preterist can do away with Revelation 1 through 18, so we don't have to go through all that stuff. I'm all for it. So count me a wishful partial preterist.
Wishful partial preterist, yeah. All right. Well, hey, I appreciate Blake for joining us, and for Skip for being a part of this as well. This definitely is a very interesting conversation. We have to do this again and go into this some more, because there's so much to talk about. Because each scripture we could probably talk about for like 20 minutes, that you're going through, and we just don't have that time today to do that. But maybe we can just hone in on maybe one of these or something, and kind of
we'll have to bring you. I know you guys are going to have to wait, but we'll bring you back next year, okay? If you don't,
what gives? Next year, you got to wait so long?
No, wait a minute. Whoa. You say next year, so that would be sometime after mid-March.
Yeah,
that's true, Skip. Yeah, we're booked in January and February. Right now.
I always wish all of my friends Happy New Year in March.
March.
Okay, Skip. That went over my head. I got it now. Okay.
Exactly.
All right.
Because I don't buy by the Gregorian calendar. But guys, have a wonderful day. God bless y'all and the work you're doing. God bless the efforts. God bless you, Skip, with your beautiful festive, Grinch shirt on.
He's a mean one, Mr. Grinch.
Yeah. All right. We've gone overtime. We're in double overtime, so we got to go ahead and say goodbye to everyone, and we'll see everybody again on another edition of Prove All Things. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.